This is our trial run for something like this to do. We've done a virtual broadcast before. We've done Zoom meetings before, but this is a brand new format for us. So this is a great way to try it out, and we'll just look for people as they're coming on board. So what do you think, Mitchell? Should we go ahead and get started?
I will actually turn my camera off as well and let Beth do a little introduction, and then we will start the presentation.
Okay. Well, thank you. And now I am making an introduction to people I can't see, but I know you're there and I feel your warmth. And thank you for coming this evening. We are so excited to get started with our Mosaic 2020 exhibit. And I could turn off my phone, but I couldn't turn off my office phone. Apparently it's ringing, so you'll just have to ignore outside sounds. But we are very excited to bring you this presentation this evening and give you a preview of our exhibit that opens tomorrow. So we'll be walking you through the exhibit, just giving you a brief intro of our artists and some of the work that you can see. And we hope that you will take the opportunity to come and see the work in person as well. I think you'll get a good flavor for the work based on what you see this evening, but it's really not the same as seeing the work in person. So we're very excited to be able to take you through it. I want to thank our 2020 Mosaic sponsors. We have 6 of them. Our artist patrons are Angela and Timon Daniels, Emerging Innovations from Corning Incorporated, Brittany and Fabio Salgado, and Sprague Insurance. And then our artist supporters are Bright Ideas by Martinek and Rick Curran Auto Sales. So thank you so much to our supporters and our sponsors who make this possible and make it possible for us to offer this exhibit to you. So I think we can just go ahead and get started, Mitchell. I'm gonna let Mitchell then lead you through just as if you were walking through the gallery. And I'm going to go ahead and cut my camera until it's time to jump back in. So Mitchell.
All right, so we'll start our tour here in the gallery. The first work we have is by Becky McNeil, who is a modern quilt artist. This piece here was inspired by a story from Vernon Lee, The Enchanted Woods, and other essays on the genius of place. And it kind of talks about looking for the magic around us. And she thought this was really important in this current time because she talked about when she traveled and we don't get to travel anymore. And one of Vernon Lee's key things was to look for the magic that's already around you and treat everything as special, not just those special occasions. She submitted 2 12 by 12 pieces as well as 8 6 by 6 pieces that are available. And then, so we've made our way to the hallway, and the first piece that you will see on your right when you enter the hallway is going to be Ivy Stevens-Gupta. I'm going to stop sharing and actually ask Ivy to join us at this point. Ivy, this is, I believe, is this your 3rd year? Yes. So Ivy has actually been part of Mosaic for 3 years now. She's an artist out of Ithaca, New York, and she does the wonderful bright objects that you just saw that are these in acrylic, the ones that you sent us?
Mostly acrylic, some have oil and some have mixed media.
All right. Well, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to you. I'm going to stop my camera at this point. And
hi, everyone. Again, I'm Ivy Stevens-Gupta. I'm located tonight in my studio in Ithaca, New York. In fact, the painting behind me is actually one of mine. It's called Rainbow Fish. It measures 5 feet by 4 feet. But for the mosaic, I'm doing much smaller paintings. And just to show you an example of what these look like, they're almost 3D. They're all acrylic and oil and polymers and high gloss resin on birch board canvas. I wanted to thank all of you tonight for zooming in. And a special shout out goes to Mitchell and Beth and everyone at 171 Cedar Arts for organizing this mosaic. I know I'm preaching to the choir when I say how important places like 171 Cedar Arts are in helping to provide a safe learning environment for children and adults. I'm a visual artist who focuses mostly on painting. As you'll see during the next 4 slides, I have many different styles of painting, but I must confess that I love abstract art the most. So Mitchell, if you'll go to my first slide. I find that I do a lot of landscape paintings. I'm inspired by environmental sustainability and the beautiful scenery found here in upstate New York. The first painting on the left is called Milky Way Reflections. I used several layers of acrylic paint on birch board and then sealed it with a high gloss resin. I should point out that I use a blowtorch during this resin process to eliminate bubbles and to provide a smooth, glassy finish. This is also the same technique that I have used for all 16 of my mosaic paintings at 171 Cedar Arts this year. The painting on the right is called Blue Skies Ahead. You can't see it from this photo, but there is a tiny airplane heading into big fluffy white clouds. I took several photographs of clouds to use for reference when creating this photorealistic painting. And the next slide, please. I'm showing you here 2 different paintings that actually won international awards last year. On the left is a mixed media painting of mine that was in a traveling exhibit in Germany. It is called Redstone. It was created using acrylic, oil, and polymers on Yupo paper. The colorful painting on the right is called Floral Happy Dance. It was created with wax pastel and pencil on gallery wrapped canvas. Next slide, please. Earlier this spring, during the first few months of the pandemic, I was really craving color. I worked on a series of summer abstract and mid-century modern paintings. Each one was 12 inches by 12 inches and made using acrylic paint on birch board and then sealed again with resin. The cohesive patterns and color schemes are repeated in each painting. The one on the left is titled Sailing, and the painting on the right is Beach Blanket Bingo. If you look closely, you'll see a touch of glitter was added to a stripe in each painting. Again, adding to the continuity of the series. Next slide. On the left are 2 paintings that are 48 inches by 48 inches, made with acrylic, gold, and silver leaf, glitter, and epoxy resin on gallery wrapped canvas. The first one is called Gender Blender because it focuses mostly on pinks and blues. The other one is called Aquatic Symphony. Each one consists of concentric circles that convey exuberant color harmonies. These large paintings often take 2 to 3 months to complete because of the complexity of the design and large scale. The second image is of 50 paintings. Each one was 6 inches by 6 inches by 1.7 inches. I created these for 171 Cedar Arts Kaleidoscope fundraising event back in 2018. The theme was color therapy and the style ranged from photorealism to abstract. One of the things I enjoy most about being an artist is sharing my love for color and creativity with others. I've been giving lectures and teaching workshops on color theory, art marketing, color therapy, and painting for the last several years. If you'd like to learn more about my art, you can connect with me on Instagram at ivystevensgupta.art or visit my website at Ivy Creative Designs. Thanks.
Thank you, Ivy. That was great. So I think right now we'll come back to questions unless someone has a question at this point. And I don't see anyone popping in. So I think, Mitchell, we can just go ahead with our gallery tour.
All right. Let me start the next video. Hold on one second.
Okay. So I know where we're headed, so I'll just start talking about Bob Ivers. So I've painted with Bob and sketched with Bob over the last several years. which is always a treat. He's been a frequent exhibitor at 171 over the years, both for Artful Raffle, if you remember that, or Artful, and also he was a protege of Tom Buechner, so you may see some of that in his style. Bob paints in oil. His theme this year is sum of its parts. Each of his larger paintings has been broken down into its component parts. So he has 8 6x6 paintings to 12x12s. For Bob, still lifes and landscapes are fundamentally different. He's got complete control over his subject as an artist for a still life, matter, composition, and lighting. And Bob says for landscapes, that's completely different. That's all determined by nature. Bob's favorite is painting landscapes. I've seen him do that plein air and from photos. But he lives in Horseheads, and this is his 3rd Mosaic exhibit. So we're welcoming Bob back.
So our next artist is Chris Bell. Chris actually is a art teacher at Horseheads. He's also a graphic designer. This year he did these wonderful butterfly specimens. They are, he actually painted a couple of them incorrectly, unfortunately, on his board, so we have to rehang a few of them, but they're these gorgeous, bright colored acrylic paintings on 6x6 tiles. And this is actually his 2nd year participating in Mosaic.
All right. So here we are at work by Bridget Bossart Van Otterloo. I think all of you will recognize her work because this is her 4th Mosaic. And Bridget is a teacher, an art teacher. She teaches both watercolor and oil painting here at 171 Cedar Art Center. Bridget also focuses her subjects typically on nature and mostly on florals. She really enjoys painting flowers and so in some of her artwork, you will see both flowers and insects. She was an art major at Houghton College, and she also studied in Florence and also influenced by Tom Buechner. Out of college, Bridget was hired by Tom to be an apprentice along with her husband, working for Tom. So she has, of course, since then made quite a name for herself regionally, and she displays her art in galleries locally in Hammondsport, in Ithaca, and around the region for regional shows. And the North Star, like the North Star Gallery, also in Rochester.
So our next artist is Dwayne Thomas Neal. This is his 3rd show.
Yes.
It wasn't in his bio, sorry. The great thing about this work is that Dwayne Thomas Neal is donating all of the proceeds from the sale of his work to 171. He is a local artist that resides in Big Flats and has been actively exploring his artistic side and supporting local arts both as a painter and an artist for about the last 10 years. So at this point, we'll move on into the gallery.
All right, so here we have on our first right turn, Philomena Jack. Philomena Jack is also a returning artist to Mosaic. This is her 4th Mosaic. And this is pop art in its finest, lollipop art. She is a BFA graduate and she teaches community arts. She has taught at 171 Cedar Art Center. And she's currently teaching in a private elementary school in Elmira. So her works range from her series of jazzy plein air on-sites to very quirky, huge cupcake figures and balloon drawings. And she's most recently published a coloring book that has, she has a character called Bunzi, and Bunzi's traveled the world, and Bunzi also is Bunzella in a series of mandalas that she has in this coloring book. In this particular series, I think it's just nothing hidden in the fact that this is one sweet exhibit. So I'll hand it back to you, Mitchell.
So the next artist you'll see is Jill Schiller. She developed her art. It began at combining code and symbols In 2014, she started her own business, Just Designs, in order to focus on her artwork. For this project, she divided one of her hand-drawn geometric designs into 4 sections. And when all 4 pieces are displayed together, a color wheel of 8 colors can be seen. The geometric design is painted in shades of gray and is repeated on each of the 4 panels, coming together and connecting at the center.
All right, so now we're heading over to Amanda Warren's work. You know Amanda from our ceramic studio. Amanda runs our ceramic studio. She's our ceramic studio technician and a very talented instructor as well here at 171. So I'll turn it over to you, Amanda.
Thank you, Beth. So this installation is my 4th year participating in Kaleidoscope and Mosaic. And what's different about this one is that it's interactive. So what a perfect time to choose to have people touch things than in a pandemic. But of course, we'll have hand sanitizer out for people to sanitize when they're done. So Mitchell's going to share my PowerPoint, which will show each year's version of the Mosaic show that I've done. The first 2 years were, of course, the 50 panels. And each year I've done a ceramic tile. The first year started with pasta, like alphabet pasta that was smushed into clay. And I recorded a word that kind of summarized my day for 50 days. And that's kind of displayed on each one. The next year in 2018, I started focusing specifically on the alphabet and individual letters, which is something that I've kind of been obsessed with since undergraduate studies, and specifically fonts and different typefaces. So the one that I've kind of focused on is Helvetica. So I call my clay versions Clayvetica, which is this 2018 installation. The following year, I switched it up and started playing with some just impressions from plants. So this is when we had it at CMOG last year. So a lot of these plants are all from either my garden, the landscaping that we have around 171, or surrounding neighbors, and just pressed into the clay. And I developed glazes to kind of highlight and accentuate all of the texture for each flower and plant. So I called these clay tanicles. And they did seem to be fairly popular. So when we brought it back to 171, I was able to switch some out and have a full variety of all of these different plants that we have in our area. And this year I went back to letters, and this was kind of a switch from a show that I was meant to do with the Rockwell Museum this year at their art lab, which was going to be a collaborative show with many different female artists from the area, including Philomena. She was going to be part of this show. And Mitchell's going to show you a quick video of one of my prototypes, which was going to include these tiles kind of stacked to create words that you would look through, and of course they would all spin. So that was my first prototype, and then the one next to it was the second to be individual letters, because it was going to be a multi-installation show. So there were going to be a couple different pieces. Let's go to the next one, Mitchell. Oh, so this is going to show you the kind of process, James, to get everything to be as consistent as possible. So I used a program with a machine called the Cricut Cutter, which is something that you attach to your computer. And I designed it in their design space, and this machine cuts out your design. So first I started to cut these out with craft foam. And that creates like a stamp for me to press into the clay. So here's a time lapse of that process. Right now, it's cutting out the letter P, Each one was mounted on a circle first. That was the first thing that we saw cut out. And then the second version on the red foam is the P actually getting cut out. The added complication is that I have to account for clay shrinking. So each design on the foam is about 12% bigger than it needs to be. And then I get to do the fun part of like weeding out all of the cutout parts. So let's go to the next one, Mitchell. So after I get the foam, these are all the letters that I had, and this has music. So we'll stop and listen to this one. There's our dance break. So I did go through the entire alphabet, although my exhibit here at 171 only has 16 of them. I do have designs for each letter of the alphabet. So after I had these designs cut out, the next part was actually doing the clay. So this first video shows me in my modified basement, which I started into a studio when we had our shutdown. So I'm throwing clay to roll a slab, and I use slats of wood on either side to help gauge the thickness of it and smooth it out. It needs to be fairly thick at this point so that I can kind of compress it later on as I roll the foam into the clay. And then I use a different tool to cut out the circles, which makes it a whole lot easier and a little bit more precise. And I put the foam right on top, and I use a rolling pin and press it in there. Cut out the center. That's what it looks like when it's done. And then the next video shows the more tedious process of using a scalpel to cut out all of the negative space in the tile. So all that I'm left with is the actual design that you can see. I leave the foam on there to kind of act as a guide for myself. It helps kind of keep the lines a little bit straight. And part of the trick with this is getting the clay at the right consistency. It needs to be soft, but not so soft that I can't pull it out with the scalpel because it gets sticky. And if it's too hard, then I break the pieces, which with something like this that has lots of arms was a trial and error aspect of things. I work on the back, I smooth all of those inside cut spaces, use a sponge to smooth it out. I'm using porcelain, so I can continuously use that sponge to kind of smooth and soften the edges so that they all have kind of a smooth finished quality to them. And do little touch-ups here and there. And that's what it looks like when it's been finished from cutting. Then I dry it between two pieces of drywall. Let's go to the next one, Mitchell. And then my next kind of process involves bringing them from my basement studio into 171, where I fired them. So that top shot shows what they look like after they've been glaze fired. So there is a black glaze on the inside surfaces, the edges of the tile, which is to help make them stronger and more resilient. And then that video that's kind of spinning around shows the different ink that I'm using to color the surfaces of them. So I use India ink specifically. And this installation has metallic India ink that has some iridescence to it because I like shiny things. Doesn't. And right next to it, it shows what's on the back of my wood panels. So I used 1x6s to give me a little bit more support and painted those black, and then applied the same design that I cut out in foam with this holographic vinyl. So I used my machine again to cut that out and apply it to the board. And then applied hardware to help suspend the tile from the surface of the board. So you can see in that side shot the different types of nuts that I have on there. There's a bolt that kind of goes through the center of the block of wood. And I got to tell you, I know a whole lot more about hardware than I thought I ever would. The top piece on there is called an acorn nut, and that just kind of seals it off and gives it a nice finish. But that's kind of what it looks like from the side. You don't really get all of that information when they're on the wall and you're looking at them straight on. So that allows the tiles to actually spin and give you a kaleidoscope effect with the vinyl that's behind it and the clay that's in front of it. So this video kind of demonstrates what it looks like with it spinning. That's kind of what it looks like. They all kind of make a little metallic noise because, you know, it's metal on clay. So one of the things that we'll have to do next week is kind of take a video of me like pulling my hands down all of them, which will make our installer a little bit nervous, but if I break them, it's okay. Hopefully that won't happen because I did fire them so that they would become more durable to their top temperature. So the glaze also helps to bolster the strength of those, because the original intention was that they were going to be at the art lab for the Rockwell and they needed to be somewhat kid-proof. So we'll have to do some trial and error to see if that is actually true while they're up in our gallery. But that's kind of the rundown of my process, and then it's persnickety and detail oriented, and I'm just happy to kind of see the final results all together, and I'll have to finish the rest of the alphabet so that I have a full set.
So thanks, Amanda. Really appreciate you going through the entire process for us and showing you just how much work is behind some of these pieces. But be careful when you play with those, Amanda, because if you break them, you buy them.
Yes, that's very true.
Thank you so much. Okay, Mitchell, I think
Absolutely.
we're ready to continue our tour through the gallery. All right, so our next stop is at Rob Houghton's photographs. So Rob is no stranger to the Houghton Gallery. In September of 2018, Rob had a full solo show at the gallery. So some of you may remember his photography and his style of photography. Rob has been photographing both nature and portraits and buildings and places he's visited and traveled to for 40 years. But it's only been in the last 5 years that he has exhibited and sold his fine art prints. He grew up in the Corning area. Some of you might be familiar with the Houghton name. And in fact, our Houghton Gallery was named for his grandmother's donation to the building 20 years ago. So he has worked from darkroom to his current process, which is all digital, and he's happy to share some of these prints from you. And he is also quite a gardener. These are all from his vegetables and fruits from his garden and yard in his current home, which is in Massachusetts. So thank you.
So our next artist is Martha Manikas Foster. She is not only a ceramic artist, she is also one of our instructors. She actually has a mug workshop coming up in November, where they are going to put a knitted sweater design on, emboss it onto a mug that will be ready and perfect for hot chocolate this winter. She's participated in Mosaic several times, and this year she was excited to create some more functional bowls and plates. She's done tiles in the past.
Okay, so excuse me, our next artist is Rob Tarlack. I've gotten to know Rob over the last couple of months since he submitted his work and was accepted for this juried show. He's quite an interesting fellow. Rob has been taking photos for many years, and he started out with his obsession for racing and his love for photography, and actually ended up getting degrees in automotive technology at SUNY Morrisville, then photography and journalism at Cal State in San Marcos, formerly Palomar College. Unfortunately, he suffered in a construction accident, a traumatic brain injury, and fractured his femur in 5 places. So he ended up with quite a long hospital stay for 5 months trying to recover. It dramatically changed the approach of his photography. So you will see a collection of things in this exhibit of his, ranging from concert photos that he took before his injury to photos where he now focuses on art as therapy. And he has groups that are attending therapy workshops and people with traumatic brain injuries who are going through therapy. So the work that he submitted is a mixture of both his love of racing, his love of music and concerts, and his art therapy.
So I think I'm just going to let the video run for these last few artists. All of their bios are in the gallery and also featured with their work on our online exhibit. Just for the sake of time, so that we have time for questions if there are any. Just kind of run through. Michael Sampson is new to us this year. Rebecca Finch, I think, has been part of this for all 4 years now. This is the work from Brett Holland, who you might know as one of our culinary instructors, but he also enjoys woodworking. That he provided this year are mystery boxes that all have mysteries inside, wine, money, and other fun objects that you can purchase. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and stop the video. We'll ask our artists to come back in, and we will, if anybody wants to join us, they can ask some questions of our artists or some questions about pieces that they saw in the gallery.
Thank you, Mitchell. Thank you, Beth. I mean, it was a nice tour, virtual tour again. I can start with a question for Amanda.
Sure.
I love your constructs, and actually I did not recognize the letters first, which leads to my question about how do you decide on the layout, how to blend these letters together so they're there or they're not there?
Well, you know, each version that I ended up with was after doing probably 5 to 10 different iterations of each letter. So in my first installation with the letters in 2018, I was doing this by hand. So I had printed out all of these letters, cut them out by hand, and was manually manipulating them to create the designs in different patterns. This year, I upgraded, got some new fun toys, which was that Cricut, and it comes with this digital design space. So I was able to do this a whole lot faster and get a whole lot more precision because my machine was helping me to cut the designs. So going through all of those different iterations of the designs was a little bit more organic because I could just make a central pattern and then repeat it or flip it and mirror it. One of the concepts is to create this radial symmetry. So a lot of my pieces have that either bifurcated bilateral symmetry, so you could fold them in half and they would match up. It might be diagonal symmetry so that it's folded across the diagonal to create that same pattern. And it's one of the concepts that I'm interested in is semantic satiation. So it's when you repeat something so much that it loses its meaning. And by creating repetition and all of these same patterns, I kind of create new symbols with the letters. So it's my own version of a language, I guess, if I want to go that far with it. But These are just some of the options. My computer is full of all of the other different designs. So if I get bored, I have more options to choose from.
Awesome. Thanks.
I want them really small and light in earrings.
Oh gosh.
They make great jewelry. But I think you might have to switch out of ceramics. I'm not sure that would work.
I don't know. We have to figure out how to get my a laser cutter. I don't have one to cut clay. Or we can start 3D printing. That's the other avenue to go down.
There you go.
James likes that.
James all over that. Actually, you should probably have a conversation with James, who does 3D printing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There.
I have a quick question for Ivy.
Yes.
To jump in. Can you talk a little bit about the resin? That makes your work very unique. And I've heard a rumor that it involves a blowtorch sometimes.
Yes, that's true. So I've been doing resin art for the last 12 years. I learned the technique from a fellow Corning artist, Bridget Baldwin, who did a lot of Lucille Ball portraits. And when she did these, she would include beads and miscellaneous materials and then seal it in the resin. And I was kind of fascinated by that. Now, of course, a lot of people use resin in their art. But it does require you, if you want all those little bubbles in a perfectly smooth surface, to use a blowtorch in order for it to get, smooth. And I remember the first time I did this was probably 5-6 years ago, when I actually used a physical blowtorch rather than a torch that you would use normally for your creme brulee. And I was scared. I mean, I had a big canister, and I made sure everybody was out of the house, and I did it in my basement, and I was scared to death that I was, going to blow everything up. But
there goes
now
the house.
Yeah, now it's like, old hand. I'm used to it, and I enjoy it.
Your husband's used to it.
Yeah, he is. And it's something that you have to wear the full mask and everything, and the rest, goggles, gloves. The temperature has to be just right, because if it's too cold, the resin will never cure and it'll be sticky to the touch. And then if you have any flaws, like let's say you drop an eyelash or a dog hair or something on it, you have to sand the whole thing down again, lightly sand it, and put another coat on it and go through the whole process all over again. So it's very time consuming. It can be messy. That's why I do some art with the resin, and then other ones I just finish them with varnish.
Thank you.
So the blowtorch aspect of it doesn't harm the acrylic underneath, or is there an upper range?
So what it does is it helps, the heat helps the bubbles evaporate. So you kind of it's a feather touch on top of the painting, just to kind of have that heat allow them to, evaporate. But if you were to hold it there,
the connection to creme brulee is good.
Yeah. I love creme brulee. I make creme brulee too. But if you were to hold it there for more than a second in any one spot, it would burn it. So you gotta be careful.
So it takes some practice to get it right, it sounds like.
It does.
Well, I think I've seen a picture of you in your full gear somewhere along the line, maybe on.
Yeah, I think on Instagram, I had like a little short video showing it.
Yeah.
the protective stuff.
Yeah.
Well,
Do not try this at home.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to ask a question about the blowtorch, but Beth got me first. So
sorry.
Okay. And I use resin sometimes too. I make my own wax, like homemade wax paper with the cloth, and you mix it with the resin so that it'll stick to keep the food sealed in and stuff. So resin's very sticky to work with.
It is.
Is there anything that you have to pay attention to when you're using that?
Yeah, there is. That's a great question to ask, because what you don't want to do is spend hours, weeks, months on a painting or an art project, and then get to the point where you're mixing the resin together and then not have equal amounts of resin that you mix together, and not mix it for, at least 5 minutes and then pouring it out. Because if you don't do all of those things, you will end up with resin that never dries, resin that maybe looks cloudy, resin that has bubbles in it. So you've got to be diligent about the whole process, making sure that your area is perfectly clean. There's no dust coming in.
More scientific sometimes almost than.
It is. And it's just, when I think about, sometimes it takes me months to create a big painting. And then when I go to put the resin on it, that's like a whole nother layer of nervousness, because you're like, am I going to ruin this? And fortunately, I have done it maybe twice, but it's been smaller paintings, and I've been able to sand the whole thing down and put a couple more coats of resin on it and fix it. So it's all good.
Yeah. Oh, geez.
Well, the effect is gorgeous. I love the outcome of that. I guess I've only really seen the things that you've done for Kaleidoscope and for this here, but just in all, it's so striking. You painting around the room and seeing, like, even the specular, effect of the reflections that come off the front, and coming to see the front of it. I feel like it enhances. Well, you're talking about some of those photorealistic pieces. I feel like that really enhances, like, having the reflections gives it a little bit more life.
It does. I think
really
it makes the colors pop for sure.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it makes it so vibrant.
Mm-hmm.
I was curious about the color. This is Madonna. Does the resin change the color of the work, or is there something special you have to do to get that clarity?
No, actually, the resin doesn't change the color of the work. If anything, it enhances it, because it adds a layer of reflectiveness, so that the light.
Did everybody freeze? Oh. Hello?
Yeah.
Oh, we lost Beth for sure.
Oh, she's really gone. Amanda, how did you hone in on the alphabet? You said you kind of got obsessed with it a little bit when you were in school, training, but what made you go that way?
I like the shapes of letters, just the kind of geometric aspect of them. The way that I ended up connecting this to the more academic work was this whole other fixation on language and how people interpret images and symbols with nonverbal communication. So how you can communicate without having to actually speak. So looking at pictograms and symbols and iconography and how that transcends any language barrier. So one of my odd hobbies is collecting pictures of icons. Airports are a great place for this, because that's like one place where you really have to go across every language barrier. And how well do images communicate what they're trying to do? So I spent my whole thesis for grad school talking about language and rambled on for about 100 pages about this whole process. But because English is my primary language, I kind of focus on our 26 letters for the alphabet. Another project that I kind of went towards were letters from other languages and the symbols that are used similar to our Arabic alphabet, and how those are similar with shapes, and really kind of just focusing on letters as shapes and how they can kind of transform to mean something else depending on your perspective.
I can't wait to see what you do next year too.
I also like the way that this really, when you were collaborating with the Rockwell, it fit into the, not just the art piece, but how art is intertwined with learning, and your work was linked to literacy.
Yes, yep. That was kind of the focus for the art lab is what aspect of learning could kind of focus on. And of course, literacy kind of comes to the forefront when you're looking at letters and language. So getting that initial recognition from kids who are learning the alphabet, but kind of putting adults on the same level, because you might not know that these are letters when you first look at them. So there's some deciphering that would go into that. So the whole idea for the Rockwell was that I was going to have a wall of the letters with these symbols individually. And then the word installation, this whole thing was going to be called word play. The word installation would focus on the common typography, a phrase that they use to check alphabets and different fonts. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog.
Right.
So those words were going to be stacked together. You'd look at the wall with the individual letters and then go to decipher what the wall of words actually said. So it was meant to be playful and increase the just sight recognition of seeing letters and how those kind of connect together.
Well, I hope there's some way after the pandemic to resurrect that, because the concept is really exciting. I have a question for Ivy before we go, and that is just thinking about the pandemic and how much art means to people and how it can be so therapeutic. You know, we see it in Rob Tarlek's work, but in your work, people comment about the vibrancy, the color, the reflection, and in some of your pieces, really the calm that your work invokes, or it evoke emotion. Can you just talk a little bit about color therapy?
Sure. So you may not know that some of you that I've just met tonight, that I'm actually a certified color therapist. And the reason that I became certified in color was because I noticed when people would come to my studio that they would gravitate towards a certain painting that was dominant in a different shade or a different color. And this always kind of intrigued me. And I thought, well, I certainly have my favorite colors and I react to them. And I thought, you know, what is this all about? And so I decided to do some research and study and took a whole course to become certified. And you'll know, I mean, there's the common things that you learn when you think about color. There are the cooling colors like green, blue, and purple that people tend to find more soothing. So if you were in a doctor's office or in a waiting room, typically the walls are going to be colored in this shade. But if you wanted to energize somebody, let's say that you're going in for physical therapy, then you would want more warm colors like red, orange, and yellow, because they to kind of enliven us. And the same in New York, where we could be suffering from light, you know, needing light, sunshine, because it's so dark here in the wintertime. A lot of people will have blue light therapy in the morning. And what that does is it kind of engages your circadian rhythm or your internal clock so that you become more alert and you're more apt to not suffer from depression or sadness because you're lacking light. I mean, I could go on for hours and hours and hours, but I won't. But color, I will say that color plays a huge role when I'm coming up with different paintings. Thanks for that question, Beth.
I can relate to that. I often goes to my blue place.
Yeah. Blue has been actually a favorite of mine lately too, for some reason.
I think we all need that calm right now, Ivy.
We do.
Yeah. So, but I do appreciate the balance of color in your exhibit. And when you get to see Ivy's exhibit in person, it is pretty amazing because you've kind of run the gamut of the color wheel in your exhibit, but there are places where your eye just lands and rests and then moves on and lands and rests.
Yeah.
It's really kind of soothing.
Thank you.
So, all right. Any other questions? I think we're coming up on our 6:30. All right. So we have a little exit strategy for our video, don't we, Mitchell?
We do.
I want you to walk out of the, okay. And I think we have one more artist on the way out the door.
That's
Just a real
right.
quick intro. Okay. So
So
we'll take you out the door of the gallery. Oh no, we've got to talk about this before we do that quickly. Go ahead. How to purchase art.
Mosaic starts in 24 hours. So we hope you, if you saw something, we hope you are ready to purchase. The great thing about this is all of the artists have their own section. So if there was a specific artist you wanted to see again, or you knew what works you wanted, you can go directly to their page and scroll through their work. Our big thanks to Teresa Smith, who was fundamental in setting all of this up for us this week. So this link goes out tomorrow. So keep an eye out for it in your email. And it's the same link that we use, or same program we use for Kaleidoscope. So
and it'll be on our website as well. So there will be no shortage of ways to find this link, because we really would like to move this artwork and have people enjoy it and see it. And if, there are some folks who are afraid to come out now and really want to enjoy the artwork from their home. And this is a way that they can do it, which is fun for us. And my sister in California can enjoy the artwork, and she's not here. So it is a nice addition.
On that, we will go ahead and take you on out. One last thank you to our sponsors, Emerging Innovations of Corning, Brittany and Fabio Salgado, Angela and Timon Daniels,
Corinne Motors, and
Frog Insurance. Yes.
Bright Ideas by Martinek.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming this evening. We hope you enjoyed the program, and we hope you can make it to see the show in person.
Thanks, Mitchell.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, really
That was fun.
appreciate it.
Fantastic.
We'll
Take
see you.
care.
Good luck.
Thanks. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you in Mosaic.